buddies, hello and welcome to another Monday and another troll through the Bowlers World Archives. Thankfully we've got through January. We're getting closer to summer. Hopefully we're getting closer to actually getting out there and playing some bowls again, although I have seen that the British Team Championships have been cancelled. Hopefully they'll change their mind, it'll just be postponed till later in the year, but anyway, less of that. Thanks for joining me today for another look back at the archives. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and if you're not already a bowls buddy and a member of this wonderful community of ours, please hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free of charge, and don't forget to hit the notification bell for notifications of new content on the channel, which is currently 3 times a jolly week. So I thought today we would look back at Bowlers World issue 198, February 1997. Now 1997 was arguably my best ever year in bowls, winning the Waterloo and a few other competitions that I never thought I'd ever get close to winning, and this was excuse me, frog in the throat, but it was actually the beginning of the end for bowls as I see it. And the front page, usual prerequisite photo of people enjoying themselves in a very nice sunny climate, but underneath that, Bass pull the plug. And it was the news that we'd been expecting. It was first sort of mooted in December 96 that Granada had decided that they no longer wanted to show crown green bowls. They wanted to focus on other sports such as ice hockey, and with that news, Bass sort of thought, well, why are we pumping 20 grand into a competition that nobody's going to see? And when you think about it, you know, £20,000, I think it was 4 days of live bowls, £20,000 to Bass, wasn't a lot of money for that much advertising on television. I'm not sure what the rate is. It's about £5,000 a minute or something like that if you want an advert, depending on the time of day. It might be £1,000, I'm not sure, but £20,000 for 4 full days. Well, what was the coverage? It was at least 20 hours coverage, so it made sense. Anyway, I'll read a little bit of it. Bass Brewers have scrapped their £20,000 Masters Classic tournament as a direct result of Granada pulling the plug on televising the popular event. Bass feel they cannot justify their sponsorship of the 4-day competition without the exposure of television, but they plan to continue their considerable sponsorship in crown green bowls at local level. And if you go further down, Bass ploughed in more than £600,000 to help run the Masters over its 15-year reign. It was a tournament devised by Bass and Granada as an event geared to television. Funding for each tournament grew to £50,000, and of this £20,000 was for prize money. Quite depressing thinking back now, because you know, the Bass was the motivator for most people who played the game competitively to do it, really. And it started in 1982, and for me it initiated the boom in bowls, and its loss started the demise of crown green bowls, certainly at a competitive level. People argue that leagues are still thriving. They're not. I will dispute that while I've got breath in my body. But I remember being at Blackburn Indoor Bowling Club on the day that this news was released, and Mick Chapman was there in reception signing in, and I was there, and I just said, have you seen the news, Mick? And he goes, no, what's that? I said, cancelled the Bath. And honestly, I'll never forget it. It felt like he'd lost, just somebody had just died, and I felt like consoling him and giving him a hug, but he was absolutely devastated because Mick Chapman, I don't know, many of you may know him, many of you might not, he was the epitome of a competition bowler. He lived, breathed, every minute of his life was focused on competitive bowling. He entered everything. He had a million pairs of balls to suit every green he went to. He was entering 150 competitions a year, far more than I was. He was everywhere, and his aim was to get in the Bass. And in 1996, I think he won the British TPA Championships, which was a Bass qualifier, or had been in previous years. And it was gone. His whole reason for bowling had been taken away, and that went for quite a few others as well. I can remember people who were bowling in the early to mid 90s who just don't bowl anymore. They just lost all interest. And not only the players, but it also affected all the sponsors as well, because why were the sponsors putting money in? It was for advertising, for their products, for their business. The fact that their competition that had their name attached was on television, the winner of that event was on television, and when they said, oh yes, Andy Cairns won the Greenhalghs Waterloo, they would have done, they didn't do it any other time. The fact that their name was mentioned added to the gravitas, got them extra exposure, and was worth the money that they were putting in. Organisers were going to these sponsors and saying, look, my competition's a Bassmasters qualifier, the winner gets on television, your name will be attached to that winner. And they were willing to pay extra money to the competition in sponsorship. It had gone. So sponsors started winding the neck in a little bit, not as much sponsorship. Slowly competitions started dying off, and it was just the start of a decline that we're still going through. I saw some horrible video yesterday. The Pagefield Hotel at Wigan, and I have some great memories of that place. I remember I've played a junior county game. I beat Dave Higginbottom when I was about 15 or 16, something like that. I went to watch a Lancashire-Yorkshire county final there, and it was the best afternoon I have ever spent round a bowling green. I was absolutely in awe of the people I was watching. And it was a big red brick pub with a red brick wall running round it, big green, good condition, and to see it all overgrown is quite depressing. And honestly, hand on heart, I believe it's a direct result. All these greens that are going, competitions dying out, are a direct result to the Bass going. The whole reason for competition bowling had gone. Sad, really sad, and there's no coming back from it. We'd gone from having 4 or 5 competitions on television every season to none in the space of, well, 15 years, something like that. 1982 you had the Bass, you had the Waterloo, you had Top Crown, then the following year, I think it was the following year, or maybe the year after that, you had the Greenhalghs County Classic. The Champion of Champions used to be shown on Grandstand in the early 80s. What else do we have? In 86, 87, it was the Crown Challenge at Blackpool. That was added. The Super Bowl. All these competitions on television, making players like Brian Duncan a household name. Vernon Lee, I mean, the rare occasion that I talk to anyone about Crown Green Bowls who aren't really interested in Crown Green Bowls, they know who Brian Duncan is, they know who David Bryant is, they know who Vernon Lee is, they know who Noel Burroughs is. And all that went with the Bass. And to be honest with you, the rest of the newspaper this month might as well not be bothered. Might as well not bother reading it. Some of the other things that happened: Ron Holt stepped down as secretary of the BCGBA, and John Crowther took over as secretary treasurer. Former president, I think he was vice chairman and vice president of the British Parks. He used to be chairman of the British Parks. He's also been president of British Crown Green. So you know, he was a very capable guy. I always had reasonably good dealings with John. Never any issues. Personally, I know some people found him quite hard work to get on with, but I think he was just, you know, school teacher, expected things doing a certain way, and ended up as CEO through really difficult times, you know, with the game in decline as it was. And he stepped down 2 years ago. Mark Berkhamshaw took over, and he stepped into even more difficult times. And I don't want to talk about anything else really, because that was the news of the month. There was a bit about battle of the sexes, about 11 clubs resigning from the Yardley Wooden District Midweek League after a decision to allow ladies to compete against men in coming seasons. Oh my goodness! And as I've said before, I've played in mixed leagues all my bowling career really, and I just thought that's what happened everywhere. But maybe Rosendale was progressive, but maybe not, I don't know. And I've had more beatings off lady bowlers than I care to remember. Yeah, not in a good way either. Yeah, I can remember quite a few of them actually. Yeah, they hurt, but I know that I'm not going to get into it because people have their own opinions. I still believe that a lot of women don't want to play against men, and there's a lot of men that don't want to play against women, and they can do whatever they want. But I think those people that aren't bothered about who they play should be allowed to get on with it as well. And I'm sure that, you know, for me, if you're going to get rid of single sex leagues, that has to be both men and women. So there wouldn't be any ladies leagues, no men's leagues, just mixed leagues. And I don't think that would be a good idea. So I think if women only want to play in women's leagues, fine. If men only want to play in men's leagues, fine. And if there's mixed leagues, fine. Just, you know, quite happy with that, I mean. But I'm not sure it's the best way forward. And then the last thing I will talk about was a letter from a guy called Frank Lloyd, who lives in Rosendale. I played with him at Edgeside for a time. He's a member at CPA, played there for a long time. And back in the early 90s, mid 90s, like many other bowlers, he decided to branch out playing in competitions, and he used to travel around with Ian McNeil, another guy who wanted to chance his arm, see how good he was compared with other bowlers in other parts of the country. And these were the players that made up the vast majority of people that entered competitions. That's why there was 256, 512, 1,024 entries, because there were people who were above average league players who wanted to test themselves, wanted to see how good they were and see how good they could become. And that's gone out the game. Now the only people that play in comps are ones that already know what sort of level they are and know that they can compete with the best. Very few average and above average league players seem to want to compete anymore. They're just happy in their own little bit. Maybe because there aren't the things at the end of it that there used to be, like television, etc. So this is February 1997, as I say. Frank Lloyd and Ian McNeil enter a load of comps, and this was the letter. And it tickled me because I can imagine him saying it. Telephone rings. Ian McNeil here, Frank. Just received the programmes for 11 of the 1997 comps we have entered. Right, Ian, read them out. Ian McNeil, OK, these are your opponents in order. Fox Lane, John Gurney. Nursery, Chris MacDonald. Fox Lane, Peter Varney. Totty Cons, Dave Copeland. Sunbury, Glyn Cookson. Oldham Rugby Union, Dave Gwillam. Dennis Mercer, Andy Buckley. Crompton, Mike Gregory. Tong, Tommy Hayes. Cleckheaton, Bob Itchin. Walsden, Brian Duncan. Frank, are you still there? Yeah, just about, Ian. What do you think about that lot then? Ian McNeil said, it's money in the bank. You mean keep practicing then? Definitely, it'll be good for your game and you will save on tea and petrol too. Thanks for the vote of confidence, see you later. And that used to be what it was like. I'd do the same with Peter Craig. When the Art Land Diary came out, I used to ring him up and say, right, these are the competitions, what we're entering, what dates are good for you. And then when the draws came out or were sent to me or whatever, I used to ring him up, and I've said it to you this before in other videos. In a 16, to keep you apart if you travel together, there always used to be a group of death that one of us would be in. And it started out when me and Peter were travelling together. Outside of Rochdale and the local area, he was relatively unknown, I was relatively unknown, and it'd almost be 50-50 who got in the group of death. And then after I started making a bit of a name for myself and being successful and winning bigger comps, all of a sudden it swapped, and he was in the group of death maybe 75 to 80% of the time, and you sort of got thinking, maybe it's not just as straight as you think it is. And I think there was an awful lot of unofficial seeding went on back in the day, and you know, organisers want the best final day possible. They want the biggest names, they want the most exciting players to get the crowds there and to keep the sponsors happy. And I think there was a little bit of that put people off entering. And Frank and Ian, you know, they'll have been like me and Peter. They'd have been in groups of death and in 50-50 sort of thing. But you used to find that unknown players used to get thrown to the lions a little bit, and you almost had to pay to learn. You know, you'd stump your 10 quid out, and you know, you might end up playing Bancroft 2 or 3 times, and Duncan and Burrows and all these, until you got known, and then you might get easier draws. But of course that didn't happen, did it? But I think it did. I think you'd be naive to think otherwise. And as I said, the reasons were the organiser wants the best final day possible, and it was sort of accepted, you know, that you just paid for the experience for the first couple of years on the circuit, and until you got a name for yourself, and then, you know, things changed. I remember Paul Firth travelled around with Graham Wilson for a couple of years, and he was telling me that, I think he said something like 10 or 11 dates they were on the same as Gary Ellis, and he played in Gary's group, you know, every time, and played Gary maybe 6 or 7 times out of the 10 in the first round. Yeah, so I'm not going to say any more on that, because, you know, I actually believe seeding would help in certain competitions, but until we have an official seeding system, then you can't have it. So really, it should just be a fair draw. And I've always thought that players travelling together should be kept apart, not necessarily club mates. If you're travelling together in the same car, you know, fine, keep you apart. But when you get to the venue, you draw your ball out the bag, and that's that. It's fair. Nobody can moan then. There's no comeback. And in a way, makes the organiser's life a bit easier. Doesn't have to do a draw, doesn't have to do anything like that. You just produce a 16 names, so these are the 16 who's on draw on the night, and you might actually get more people turning up as well. Players, I mean, not pulling out because they've seen the draw. Oh, I've drawn Callum Ray, I'm not making the 50-mile trip, paying the petrol. I'll just lose the entry fee, save me a trip. Maybe pulling your own ball would see that problem eliminated. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Food for thought, I think. 1997, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it is almost, well, it feels like a lifetime to me. Beginning of the end, in my opinion. Who knows when the end will come. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully things will pick up when we can get bowling again. But who knows? All I know is competitive bowling took a dive once the bass disappeared. Guys, thanks for joining me. I'll hopefully see you I'll hopefully see you Wednesday for some more of me talking bowls. Hopefully might have a bit of a scoop for you, but I don't know, just waiting for something at the minute. But until then, stay safe, stay indoors, keep your mask on. Just think about that lovely summer that's round the corner when we can get out and about again. And I'll speak to you on Wednesday. Thanks for joining me. See you then. Bye for now.